I understand one of the solutions to massive pretrial publicity is a change of venue. There are two cases I want to cite to the court, both of the United States Supreme Court cases. Murphy versus Florida, and the cited, it's Shepard versus Maxwell. There are two kinds of pretrial publicity that would indicate a continuance and or a change of venue required. Prejudice is presumed from pretrial publicity when pretrial publicity is sufficiently prejudicial and inflammatory, and the prejudicial pretrial publicity saturates the community where the trials are held. They found presumed pretrial publicity in a case much less renowned, much less publicized than this one. And Your Honor, to try this case in less than a year after the verdict came in the other case, don't we need to let it calm down a little bit? Where are you going to get a jury? Mars? I mean, there's nowhere in this case.
Allendale, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton.
I appreciate your sense of humor.
It's not a sense of humor. We have many counties where these indictments were issued. I am not presuming that a jury cannot be impaneled. Just as the trial that took place on Colleton County, there was no motion to change venue. And I'm not presuming any prejudice, and the test is not based on speculation. The test is whether or not a jury can be impaneled. You first have to attempt to get a jury according to the law.
What I'm saying is, I think it'd be an exercise in futility. I know this. We've been interviewing jurors, as you know, in the murder trial. There was a juror who on that jury who could have been excused, been on the jury panel within the previous year, and told other jurors, I want on this trial, and that, I'm afraid, is what happened on that jury. We got a motion for a new trial after discovered evidence. The Attorney General is going to file their response tomorrow. We believe the Court of Appeals will order a hearing before a circuit court judge to determine whether or not the corporate court tampered with that jury. And that is and so we would go forward with another trial while that matter is pending, while that matter is being litigated?
Probably not in Colleton County.
Well, Your Honor, the idea that somehow something happens in Colleton County doesn't affect what happens in Beaufort County. I mean, this is a national case. I mean, do they not have television now in Dale County?
I don't know.
Do they not have the internet?
I don't know.
So what's the hurry? That's the other point. What is the hurry? He's pleading in federal court next Thursday. Every allegation the state has made, the victims will have their day in court. We plead, Mr. Murdaugh indicated he pleads guilty to the state charges, but the state insists on doing them in serial so they get 3 convictions so they get life without parole. A guy who's already serving 2 life sentences without parole. This is just another attempt to get more publicity, to make this another national case. And, Your Honor, I'm offended that the Attorney General he's got many other cases that are much older than this, but granted, Court TV won't be there for them. This is another effort at creating a national spectacle. Now, Your Honor has some things to say about Mr. Murdaugh at his sentencing. You obviously believe he's guilty of that. You obviously, and the jury found him guilty of that. But I would ask you to put those feelings aside and give us a chance to litigate this jury tampering issue, to allow Mr. Griffin and I to have time, if there is going to be a trial on these, prepare for those trials, which we won't in our calendar for the fall. And third thing is, why doesn't the Attorney General put some distance between the conviction in the murder case and the trial, if there has to be a trial, on the financial cases?
What if I told you that a man could smile while staring at evidence of his own destruction? That he could sit in a courtroom, surrounded by the people he betrayed, the families he devastated, the lives he shattered for profit, and still find a reason to smile? This isn't a story about a lawyer who made mistakes. This is about a man who turned trust into a weapon, who looked into the eyes of grieving mothers, injured workers, vulnerable families, and saw only dollar signs, who spent over a decade perfecting the art of theft while wearing the mask of a helper. His name is Alex Murdaugh, and before the world knew him as a convicted killer, he was something far more calculated, a financial predator operating in plain sight. Before we go deeper, I need you to do something. If you're drawn to cases that expose darkness hiding behind respectability, if you want to understand how someone can commit evil while everyone watches, then subscribe to Dark Trail Files. Hit that notification bell. What you're about to hear will change how you see trust itself. This channel doesn't just tell you what happened. We show you why it matters, why it could happen again, why it might be happening now in a town near you. Now, let's begin. Alex Murdaugh didn't stumble into theft. He engineered it. For over 10 years, from 2011 to 2021, Murdaugh operated 3 distinct schemes that would ultimately steal more than $12 million from the people who trusted him most. But here's what makes this case different from typical fraud. These weren't opportunistic crimes born from desperation. They were systematic, methodical, built with the precision of someone who understood every loophole, every blind spot, every moment when trust replaces scrutiny. Murdaugh came from legal royalty in South Carolina. His family had held the solicitor position in the 14th Circuit for nearly a century. 3 generations of Murdaughs had prosecuted crimes in Hampton County. The name carried weight. It opened doors. It created assumptions. When you're a Murdaugh in Hampton County, people don't question you. They defer to you. And Alex understood this better than anyone. He used that understanding to build an empire of theft that targeted the most vulnerable people who walked into his office. The injured, the grieving, the unsophisticated. People who trusted him not just because he was a lawyer, but because he was a Murdaugh. And he destroyed them one settlement at a time. The first scheme involved his banker, Russell Lafitte, president of Palmetto State Bank. This wasn't just a business relationship. Murdaugh's law firm was one of the bank's largest customers. They had history. They had mutual benefit. And Murdaugh knew exactly how to exploit that. Think about what Murdaugh did here. He convinced Lafitte to serve as personal representative or conservator for his injured clients. On paper, this seems reasonable. Clients who receive large settlements often need someone to manage the funds, especially if they're incapacitated or lack financial sophistication. Having a bank president serve in that role suggests security, professionalism, protection. But this gave Lafitte legal access to their settlement money, control over accounts that belonged to people who had just suffered life-changing injuries, people in hospital beds, people grieving dead family members, people who couldn't work anymore, couldn't walk anymore, couldn't live the lives they had before. And instead of protecting these vulnerable people, Lafitte became Murdaugh's accomplice. Together, he created a system. Murdaugh directed law firm employees to make settlement checks payable directly to Palmetto State Bank. The checks would list the client's names in the memo lines. To anyone glancing at the paperwork, it looked legitimate. The client's name was right there. The bank was a respected institution. What would be wrong? Everything was wrong. The money never reached the people it belonged to. Instead, Lafitte distributed funds to pay off Murdaugh's personal loans. Loans that had nothing to do with legal work or client service. Loans that funded a lifestyle Murdaugh couldn't actually afford. The bank was essentially laundering settlement money through legitimate-looking transactions, converting what belonged to injured clients into what Murdaugh wanted for himself. Lafitte collected hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees as personal representative or conservator for Murdaugh's personal injury clients. He was being paid to protect people while actively helping to rob them. The bank allowed unsecured loans to be taken out against client accounts. Money that was supposed to be held in trust, protected for people who desperately needed it, was instead being leveraged for Murdaugh's benefit. This went on for a decade. From 2011 to 2021, 10 years of systematic theft enabled by a banker who chose profit over duty. In an interview after his arrest, Lafitte admitted something revealing. He said Murdaugh used their relationship to carry out the crimes because he knew Lafitte wouldn't question him to the same extent as others would. The bank wanted to help its largest client, so they stopped asking the questions that would have exposed the fraud. That's how institutional theft works. It's not masked gunmen and dramatic heists. It's paperwork that looks almost right. It's trusted relationships that replace oversight. It's the moment when helpfulness becomes complicity. Lafitte was convicted in November 2022 on 6 federal charges: conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud, wire fraud, and misapplication of bank funds. He received 7 years in prison. But Lafitte was just one piece of a larger machine, and the machine was still running. The second scheme was perhaps Murdaugh's most cunning creation, and it shows just how intimately he understood the systems he was exploiting. In September 2015, Murdaugh opened a bank account at Bank of America. The account name read, Richard A. Murdaugh Sole Prop DBA Forge. On the surface, to anyone at the bank processing the application, this looked like a standard business account. A sole proprietor doing business as Forge. Nothing unusual. Nothing requiring additional scrutiny. But the name was deliberately chosen. It was designed to look like an account belonging to Forge Consulting, a legitimate Atlanta-based company that his law firm, PMPED, regularly worked with to structure settlements for clients. Forge Consulting was real. They were professionals. When plaintiffs received large settlements, Forge would help structure the payments over time, creating annuities and financial plans that protected the money and provided long-term security. PIMT had worked with the actual Forge Consulting for years. Staff knew the name. They trusted it. And Murdaugh weaponized that trust. This fake account wasn't connected to Forge Consulting at all. It was Murdaugh's personal account. He was the only authorized signer. Every dollar that went in belonged to him. But to the paralegals and staff at his firm, a check made out to Forge looked completely normal. They'd written checks to Forge before. This was just another one. Except it wasn't. From May 2017 through July 2021, Murdaugh funneled millions through this fraudulent account. When clients opted for structured settlements, when they wanted their money protected and managed professionally, Murdaugh would instruct paralegals to make checks payable to Forge. Those checks would be deposited not into the legitimate company's account, but into Murdaugh's fake one. The clients believed their money was being professionally managed by a reputable firm. They believed their future was secure. They believed the lawyer they'd hired was making sure they'd be taken care of for years to come. Instead, their settlement money was paying for Murdaugh's life. His debts, his expenses, his cash withdrawals. Everything they needed disappeared into everything he wanted. Think about the level of planning this required. He didn't create this account in a moment of panic when bills came due. He created it in 2015, years before some of the thefts. He was building infrastructure for future crimes, setting up the machinery that would let him steal systematically rather than haphazardly. And he used his law firm's own staff to execute it. Paralegals who trusted him, who believed the work they were doing was legitimate, who had no reason to question why settlement money was going to Forge, because that's where settlement money sometimes went. One victim after another. One check after another. Injured workers who couldn't return to their jobs. Families who'd lost breadwinners. People whose entire financial future depended on that settlement money being there when they needed it. And it was just gone. The real Forge Consulting eventually discovered what happened. They found themselves painted as accomplices to fraud, their reputation damaged by a scheme they had no knowledge of. They prepared legal action against both Murdaugh and Bank of America, arguing that basic due diligence would have revealed the fraud. One phone call to verify the account would have exposed it. But no one called. The fake Forge account generated 14 counts of money laundering alone. 14 separate instances of moving stolen money through this fraudulent account to conceal its origin. Each one representing another person betrayed, another family deceived. But the scheme that would ultimately expose him, that would drag everything into the light, involved someone much closer to home. The people who worked closest to him saw the machinery of deception firsthand. This testimony reveals how he turned trust into routine betrayal.
Moving into the latter part of 2020, Did you have any particular issue arise with a disbursement to forge that caught your attention?
I did.
Tell me about that if you would.
I was currently working from home. I had had surgery on Halloween of 2020, and I was working from home, hadn't come back yet. I was planned to come back to the office the following Monday, and on that day, I believe it was December 15th of 2020, I got a phone call from the accounts payable department. Nicole called me, and she's one of the ladies that cuts the checks and works for Jeannie Seckinger, and she told me that she had just got a disbursement sheet over, that Christy had sent over a disbursement sheet in one of my files. It made no sense. She didn't understand it, and I was confused too, because I was like, why didn't he contact me to do my disbursement? Because I'm kind of protective over my files. If I've worked that file the whole time, I want to finish that file. I want to work the whole process of it. And actually, the disbursement part is my favorite part of the file, because I want to be able to have that, be there when that client gets their money and gets that closure that they deserve. So I thought it was very odd that Christy was drafting a disbursement in one of my files, and
This was the day you were off work.
that's correct. I was working from home, and I still could have been reached, but I wasn't until Nicole reached out to me and told me.
Keep going.
She told me, so I looked, she sends it to me by email or text, I can't remember, and I reviewed it, and it didn't make sense to me either. There was a line on it that said the attorney fees were going, or amount of it was going to Forge, and I didn't understand how that was happening, and I'd never seen him send attorney fees to Forge before, and so I didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so I called the office, and Christy transferred me to Alec, and I spoke to him and asked him about it, and he said, why did Nicole call you? And I said, well, she doesn't know how to write these checks out, because it doesn't make sense to her. She hasn't ever seen a disbursement like this. And he said, I'll take care of it. And so he said, I'll call Nicole, I'll take care of it. And so I remember talking to Nicole later and say, so what did he say? What was the reason behind it? And she said, he said that they can structure their attorney fees, and that's what that check was for.
Gloria Satterfield had worked for the Murdaugh family for over 2 decades, 25 years of service. She wasn't just hired help. She was part of the household. She cared for the children. She knew the family's routines, their habits, their lives. She was there for birthdays and holidays, for ordinary Tuesdays and late nights. She was trusted with their home and their children. In February 2018, Gloria fell at the Murdaugh property. The story told at the time was that she tripped over the family dogs and fell down the stairs. She suffered severe head trauma. She remained in a coma for 3 weeks before dying on February 26, 2018. She was 57 years old. Her death certificate listed the manner of death as natural. This raised questions later, because traumatic head injuries resulting in death don't typically qualify as natural causes. The coroner eventually requested her case be reopened. No autopsy had been performed at the time of her death. The circumstances warranted investigation. But those questions came later, much later, after other crimes had already been exposed. What Alex Murdaugh did immediately after Gloria's death reveals something about how predators think. Where most people saw tragedy, he saw opportunity. Where her sons saw the loss of their mother, he saw dollar signs. He approached Gloria's sons, Tony Satterfield and Brian Harriet. These were young men who had just lost their mother suddenly and traumatically. They were grieving. They were vulnerable. They were trying to figure out how to move forward without her. And Murdaugh told them he wanted to help. He explained that they should sue him. That way, they could collect from his homeowner's insurance policies. He would admit fault for their mother's death. He would make sure they received compensation. He positioned this not as a legal maneuver, but as a way to take care of them, as something Gloria would have wanted, as him doing right by the family of someone who had been like family to him. They trusted him. Why wouldn't they? He was Alex Murdaugh. He was their mother's employer. Someone Gloria had trusted for 25 years. He was a lawyer. He knew how these things worked, and he was offering to help them through one of the darkest moments of their lives. He recommended they hire attorney Corey Fleming to represent them officially. Fleming was his close friend, his college buddy, someone he'd known for decades. The sons had no reason to suspect anything. Murdaugh presented Fleming as someone who would protect their interests while Murdaugh handled things from his end. What they didn't know was that Fleming was part of the scheme. Murdaugh's homeowners insurance companies settled the claims. One policy paid out $505,000. Another paid $3.8 million. $4.3 million in total for the wrongful death of Gloria Satterfield. Her sons waited to hear about the settlement. Months passed, then more months. They assumed legal processes took time. They assumed the lawyer Murdaugh recommended was handling things properly. They assumed that eventually they'd receive compensation that would at least help financially with the loss of their mother. They received nothing. Not a dollar. Not a phone call explaining where the money went. Not a statement. Nothing. Because Fleming had drafted the settlement checks payable to Forge, and Murdaugh deposited them into his fake account. All of it. Every penny meant for two sons who'd lost their mother went into Alex Murdaugh's personal enrichment. The money that should have honored Gloria's memory, that should have provided some measure of security for the children she'd raised, instead paid off Murdaugh's debts and funded his lifestyle. Think about what this means. Gloria died at his property under circumstances that may not have been as simple as the initial story suggested. And regardless of how she actually fell, regardless of what really happened that day, Murdaugh saw her death as a business opportunity. He monetized her tragedy. He created a fraudulent insurance claim. He convinced her sons to sue him with the promise of help. Then he stole every dollar they should have received. And he did this while attending her funeral, while offering condolences, while being the employer who supposedly cared about the woman who'd raised his children. The sons didn't discover the theft immediately. They only learned about it in 2021 when they read a news article mentioning a settlement in their mother's death. They'd never heard about any settlement. They contacted attorneys Eric Bland and Ronnie Richter. What Bland and Richter uncovered exposed not just the Satterfield theft, but Murdaugh's entire pattern of financial crimes. The investigation into Gloria's stolen settlement became the thread that unraveled everything. Fleming, the friend Murdaugh had used to execute the theft, pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges in 2023. In court, he admitted to his role in the scheme. He was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison. But think about Gloria's sons again. From February 2018, when their mother died, until 2021, when they read that news article, they lived believing that Murdaugh had tried to help them, and the process just hadn't worked out. They lived not knowing they'd been robbed. Not knowing the man who promised to take care of them had stolen millions in their mother's name. Attorney Eric Bland later said that if Murdaugh hadn't been so greedy, if he'd just given the boys $25,000 each and claimed the rest went to medical bills, they never would have questioned it. They were unsophisticated. They didn't know how settlements worked. But he took everything, every dollar, and that greed exposed a decade of crimes. Some victims didn't stay silent. Some looked him in the eye and demanded answers. This is what accountability looks like when it comes from the people he tried to erase.
I've been waiting on this day to look in your eyes. I wanted to sit down with you, one-on-one, when I found out what you did. Just want to know why. I can say, oh, excuse me. Unlike a lot of these people here, these victims, I got a lot of intimate stuff that I could say. You remember all those wildlife hunts I had for law enforcement? Your entire family was a guest of honor. Mr. Buster, Judge Eldroff, insisted on me taking care of them for the day. You don't know how many brownie points you got in my life from just that. I trusted you with everything. I knew I was gonna break. I knew it.
Mr. Bland, can you reposition his mic so I can understand?
I knew I was gonna break. Excuse me, I knew I was gonna break. But I got some notes here. I don't even know if I can go through. Our family got a deep relationship, man. You remember making a comment to me after I found out, after we discussed the possible amount this lawsuit was worth, and you made a comment to me, and you said, don't spend all this money foolishly. Tell me what you did with $20 million that you stole. Part of it being mine. And you know, I'm sitting there crying. I want everybody in the church, I need you to know. I'm not crying because of what he stole from me. I'm crying for what he did to everybody in the soup. These kids, these people dying. I didn't want to come up here and bash you, but I gotta ask you, what kind of animal are you? I can't even go over my notes. I'm not here to be your judge. Ultimately, that belongs to the good Lord and Savior. But may He have mercy on your soul. I didn't want to see you. When I saw you on TV in an orange jumpsuit, it hurt me. Still wasn't mad at you. Was this judicial system put together a system to deal with people that make bad choices? And my friend, you chose to make the choice you made. So I need the judge to know that I am in full favor of the court's recommendation for the 27 years. I can go back to us going to mediation. That you affected my wife. You chose to have Maggie deal with us those 2 days we were in Charleston in mediation. She catered to us hand and foot. You told me where to go and check into my room. We did. From that point, we never drove another foot. Neither did you. Maggie drove us everywhere we went. When all this came about, Paul, and Maggie, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. But after sitting here today and hearing some of the devious things that you did to people, these victims here, changed my mind, bro. Once again, I ask you, what kind of animal are you? Boy, I gave you my all. I would do the money you stole from me. You could have asked me for it, and I would have gave it to you if that's how I felt about you and your family. You didn't have to steal it from me, man. And I still, if there's any way possible, you set it up for me to be on your visitation list. I want to sit down with you. I want to look you in your eyes and talk to you when I can really talk to you. We got some intimate things we can talk about.
I would like that.
But why, bro? Why? Such a talent. How talented you are? I don't understand. Mr. Harpoonian, nothing to do with you, but you made a comment earlier about the attorneys trying to sell bobbleheads and cups. Can you represent this man to sell those bobbleheads and cups to repay the victims that he stole from? Thank you.
By 2021, the walls were closing in, and Murdaugh knew it. He'd stolen millions over the course of a decade. He'd built elaborate schemes. He'd coordinated with multiple accomplices. He'd created fake accounts and fraudulent documentation. But every system has a breaking point. Every lie eventually runs into the truth. For Murdaugh, that moment came in June 2021. He had worked a case with Chris Wilson, his longtime friend and fellow attorney. They'd known each other for years. Wilson practiced at a different firm, but they frequently collaborated on cases. This was a professional relationship built on trust and history. They were friends. They worked well together. There was no reason for Wilson to suspect anything was wrong. Their client received a $5.5 million settlement. The two firms were splitting the attorney fees. Murdaugh's firm, PMPD, was entitled to $792,000 as their portion. Standard practice would be for Wilson's firm to write that check directly to PMPD. The firm's name on the check, routed through proper channels, documented correctly. This is how law firms operate. You don't pay individual attorneys directly. You pay the firm. The firm then distributes fees according to their internal agreements. But Murdaugh made a request. He asked Wilson to make the check payable directly to him instead of routing it through PMPD. Wilson did so. He assumed it was legitimate. When your friend and colleague, someone you've worked with for years, makes a request like that, you don't interrogate it. You trust them. You write the check. Wilson's firm sent the expense portion of the settlement to PMPD in a separate check. This was normal. Litigation expenses and attorney fees were often separated in payment. That separate check arrived at PMPD, and it triggered a question. Jean Seckinger, the firm's chief financial officer, saw the expense check. She knew the case. She knew PMPD was entitled to attorney fees as well. So were those fees. Why had the firm received expenses but not the fee portion? She started asking questions. On June 7th, 2021, just hours before Maggie and Paul Murdaugh would be murdered, she confronted Alec about the missing money. This wasn't the first time Seckinger had noticed irregularities. There had been questions before, small things that didn't quite add up. But Murdaugh always had explanations. He was a partner. He was a Murdaugh. The firm trusted him. But $792,000 in missing fees couldn't be explained away easily. During testimony, Seckinger revealed something crucial. The firm had been preparing to examine Murdaugh's financial records. There was a hearing scheduled in a civil case, the wrongful death lawsuit from the boat crash that killed Mallory Beach. If that hearing proceeded, if discovery moved forward, Murdaugh's financial records would be exposed. Years of theft would come to light. The hearing was scheduled for June 10th, 2021, 3 days after the confrontation about the missing fees. 3 days after Maggie and Paul were killed. After the murders, that June 10th hearing was canceled. The firm opted not to confront Murdaugh about the money in the immediate aftermath of him losing his wife and son. It seemed cruel, inappropriate. He was grieving. They could address the financial issues later. Eventually, the firm did confront him, and Seckinger testified that it was her understanding that Murdaugh admitted it. He admitted to stealing from a firm, to taking money that wasn't his, to executing schemes that betrayed everyone he worked with. But before the firm could announce his resignation, before they could take any action, they heard Murdaugh had been shot while on the side of the road. This was September 4th, 2021. Murdaugh later admitted he conspired with a former client, Curtis Eddie Smith, to kill him as part of an insurance fraud scheme. He wanted his surviving son, Buster, to collect a $10 million life insurance payout. Even in the moment of supposed desperation, his instinct was to create another scheme, another fraud, another way to monetize tragedy. The staged shooting failed. Murdaugh survived, and the questions about his finances didn't disappear. Friendship became evidence. Trust became testimony. Watch how even his closest allies couldn't defend what they'd been part of.
First of all, though, just very quickly, you're a lawyer, is that correct?
I am, since 1998.
1998. And describe very quickly your practice for the record.
Actually, since 1995. I've had my own practice since 1998. In the last 15 years, I've done primarily personal injury work, automobile accidents, people that are injured at work. I practice type cases, those things.
And where do you normally practice? Where's your home base?
My only office is in Bamberg.
Do a lot of claims work?
That's all I do anymore. For the last 15 years, that's really all I do.
And do you know the defendant?
I do.
And when did you get to know the defendant?
I've known Alex since we were in high school. Bamberg and Hampton. I grew up in Bamberg, and they're only about 30 miles apart. And so I knew of Alec and had been around him some growing up. We had some mutual friends. I was a lot closer to some other guys in Hampton that I grew up playing golf and things like that with, but I would cross paths with Alec. Played on the same baseball team one summer, I think like our seniors in high school or somewhere around high school age. Didn't really keep in touch with him or cross paths with him until we ended up going to law school, and we started law school together at Carolina. 3 years there together at law school and lived together part of the time.
Did y'all become friends?
We did.
Become close friends?
Very close.
Best friends?
He was one of my best friends, yes. And I thought, he was, and I thought he felt the same way about me.
You feel that way now?
I don't know how I feel now, Mr. Waters.
Fair enough.
That separate check trigger question. On June 7th, 2021, Gene Seckinger, the firm's chief financial officer, confronted Murdaugh about the missing fee money. Hours later, his wife and son were murdered. The confrontation about the financial crimes happened the same day as the killings. Later, prosecutors would argue that the murders were meant to buy sympathy, to distract from the gathering storm of financial exposure. But the financial crimes couldn't be buried with the bodies. She was the one who asked the question that should have been asked years earlier. Her testimony shows how one moment of scrutiny can unravel a decade of deception.
Once the murders happened, it didn't seem right to be raising those issues with the defendant then, did it?
No, it didn't.
Don't need the witness.
After the murders happened, did it seem right to you to raise those issues to the defendant?
No, as I stated earlier, we were concerned about the welfare of Alec and the feelings of himself. He was not at work, and we were trying to make sure that he was emotionally okay and able to deal with things before we pressured him about anything.
And then just a few weeks later, just in July, he's still in shock from all of these murders?
Yes,
And did ultimately you get an email from Chris Wilson?
I did on July 19th.
And what did that email say?
Chris said that he had the money in the trust available to us.
He's got the money, so no big deal, correct?
Correct?
Did you still, though, in the back of your mind, have some suspicions going back for a while?
I had suspicions that I didn't really believe that because I'd yet to see the ledger or the proof, and it seemed like there was no reason not to send that to me if something wasn't going on.
When ultimately you turned back to these issues and that Chris Wilson check was found, did that result in the uncovering of all of this?
It did.
Did that result in him losing his job at the law firm?
It did.
Where his family name had been a fixture there for decades.
Correct.
Did that result in him losing his license to practice law?
It did.
And the defense asked you that. Did that result in him facing a ton of criminal charges based on all of that?
Yes.
All of that was on the cusp of being uncovered, was it not?
Yes.
Was that on the cusp of being uncovered?
Yes.
Question's been answered. Any further exam?
Very briefly, Ms. Seconder, the finding the Chris Wilson check was coincidental to your work on the forged account research, correct?
Yes, but as we uncovered the forge, we knew we had a problem.
I understand. And it was the forge issue that led to all of this.
It would have eventually been the issue if we'd requested Chris Wilson. Regrettably, that we did not in July, we would not have received the money because the money was not in there. We found that out later.
Well, we'll find out about that. But the Chris Wilson issue is a one-off compared to all these other transactions that you brought here today, right?
That's right.
All right, thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you.
In September 2023, Alex Murdaugh stood in federal court and pleaded guilty to 22 charges. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. Already convicted of murdering his wife and son. Already serving life without parole. But this was about admitting what he'd done to dozens more victims. Listen carefully to his words. Notice what he admits and what he explains. Notice what he owns and what he deflects.
Mr. Murdaugh, you've heard what Mr. Waters has stated. Do you agree with the statements he has made?
Yes, sir.
And do you wish to withdraw your formally entered plea of not guilty and plead guilty to each and every one of these charges?
I do.
You, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated a sentence in this matter that's been recited by Mr. Waters. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where there's a negotiated sentence, either I will accept the plea, guilty plea, and give you the exact sentence that you, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated, or I will not accept your guilty plea. Do you understand that?
I do, yes, sir.
And would you like for me to accept the guilty plea and impose the negotiated sentence?
Yes, sir, I would.
And because these cases, various counts are venued in various counties, Orangeburg County, Hampton County, Colleton County, Bamberg County, Allendale County, I think that in addition to Beaufort, do you wish to waive venue from those counties to have the case heard here in Beaufort?
I do.
Is there any question in your mind as to whether or not you wish to proceed with this guilty plea?
No, sir, there's no question in my mind.
Do you believe you've had enough time to think about it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are
Had
you
a long
set?
time to think about it.
I can imagine. Do you believe that you've had effective representation by Mr. Harpootlian and Mr. Griffin?
Absolutely.
Now, this plea agreement includes a provision providing for a waiver of appeal and waiver of filing any post-conviction relief, as well as ordering restitution. You have reviewed those provisions and are fully informed and agree with those provisions.
I am, yes, sir.
Under the Victim's Bill of Rights, the court must ensure that the Victim's Bill of Rights have been complied with. The state is well aware of that, as well as your lawyers. And the victims have the right to be heard prior to the official imposition of any sentence or the official acceptance of a guilty plea. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And so it's the intent of the court, assuming a factual basis is established by Mr. Waters or Mr. James, that the court will accept this guilty plea contingent upon the Victim's Bill of Rights being satisfied. Therefore, any sentencing will take place at a subsequent hearing, which will be on November 28th at 10 o'clock. Do you understand that?
It'll be when, sir?
November 28th.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, Tuesday.
I understood it wouldn't be today. Yes, sir. I understand that.
All right. And understanding all that has been stated up to this point, how do you plead?
I plead guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. You can be seated, and we'll hear from Mr. Waters.
I want to take responsibility, Murdaugh told the court. I want my son to see me take responsibility. It's my hope that by taking responsibility, the people I've hurt can begin to heal. But here's what the prosecution wanted the court to know. $6 million remained unaccounted for. Despite his cooperation agreement, despite his guilty plea, millions were still missing. And when the FBI asked him where that money went, they said he failed a polygraph test. Murdaugh's defense argued the polygraph examiner engaged in odd conduct. They rejected the claim that he'd violated the plea agreement. But prosecutors believed he was still lying, still protecting someone, still hiding the full truth even in the moment of supposed confession. His explanation for why he committed these crimes centered on addiction. But listen to how he describes it. Does this sound like someone controlled by substances or someone who found them useful?
If I took 30, if I had 30 milligram pills, you figure 100 pills would be 3,000 milligrams.
100?
100.
So you're taking 60 a day or something like that?
There were days where I took more than that. There were days I took less than that.
And how would you take them during the course of the day? I mean, how many are you taking at one time? How frequent in this time period, let's say January to June?
You know, there's a point in time, and I'm not sure when it was, I think it was well before that, where, and you have to understand this. This is something that I can still remember the first time I ever took an OxyContin.
Murdaugh, can I ask you to answer my question, and I'll let you explain all you want. And my question was, how many were you taking a day during this time from January to June? Answer that first, please, and if you want to explain, I'm happy to let you do so.
I'm not positive, and here's why. It's because over the years, like as I was saying, the first OxyContin, one OxyContin made me sick. And that was when I was transitioning from hydrocodone to oxycodone. And it made me sick because it was a really strong one. And so, you know, one OxyContin pill was like 10 hydrocodone pills. So, but anyway, as I took more and more, and over the years, it just, you know, you build up a tolerance to pain pills. And so what might give me this energy, one of the reasons I became so addicted is, you know, some people talk about pain pills and how they make them lethargic and, you know, where they can't do anything and they feel. Opiates gave me energy. I mean, whatever I was doing, it made it more interesting. You know, it made me want to do it longer. You know, to go on a drive, it made driving. It just at the beginning, it made everything better.
During testimony, Murdaugh explained that opiates didn't slow him down. They gave him energy, helped him function. He claimed he was taking massive amounts, sometimes 60 pills a day. This was his explanation for the theft. That addiction drove him. But consider the planning involved. The fake bank account created years before crimes. The coordination with multiple accomplices. The instructions to paralegals. The precise timing of disbursements. The fabrication of expenses. This isn't the chaos of addiction. This is precision. Federal prosecutors didn't buy it. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Limehouse stated, "We don't believe he is capable of living a law-abiding life." In November 2023, Murdaugh pleaded guilty in state court to additional charges, accepting a 27-year sentence days before trial. More victims, more stolen settlements. On April 1st, 2024, he returned to federal court for sentencing. Guidelines recommended 17 to 22 years. Prosecutors asked for 30, concurrent with state sentences as insurance he'd never leave prison. The judge gave him 40 years with $8.76 million in restitution. He was given the opportunity to address the people he stole from, to look them in the eye. What he said next has been analyzed by everyone who heard it.
Last thing I want to say, Your Honor, is that I am fully committed to trying to be a better person. I'm going to do as much good as possible and help as many people as I can while I'm incarcerated. I remain fully and wholeheartedly committed to finding a way to somehow make those who love me proud again in some small way. I appreciate each of you talking to me. I appreciate each of you looking at me while I'm talking to you. I can tell that you're listening, and I appreciate it. I'm going to say one more time, I hope you know, I hope you believe that it's heartfelt. And the two things that I hope you take away today are, number one, that I care about you, and number two, that I hate the things that I did, and I am so sorry. And Your Honor, I thank you for letting me address you and for letting me address the victims. Thank you so much.
Sir.
I literally am filled with sorrow, and I'm filled with guilt over the things that I did to the people that I care about so much, Murdaugh said. I understand the natural reaction to what I just said is probably, is he sorry for what he did, or is he sorry that he got caught? But I assure you and every victim that I hurt that I'm sorry for the things I did. The judge cited the staggering human toll of Murdaugh's crimes. He noted the repeated targeting of vulnerable people who were injured, sick, or grieving. He compared Murdaugh to Bernie Madoff, architect of history's largest Ponzi scheme. Ask yourself, when someone says they're sorry, how do you measure sincerity? Is it in the words? Or in the pattern of behavior that preceded them? The victims didn't just sit quietly. This is the moment where the people he tried to erase got to speak, where grief met the man who profited from it.
Your Honor, I do have one request. Do you mind if I face that way?
That'd be fine.
Because when I talk to people, I like facing who I'm talking to. Thank you. I really don't have words. You lied. You cheated. You stole. You betrayed me and my family and everybody else. And you did it at a cost of my mom's death, first of all. A couple Octobers ago, you wrote a half-hearted, I'm sorry letter, which was half-hearted because your actions did not follow through, that you were really sorry. So I'm going to read you, I have an apology. I'm sorry that you feel like you had to betray us, steal from us, cheat us, and lie to us. I'm sorry that your family has to now go through what they're going to have to go through the rest of their life because of your actions, of what you did. I want you to know that I forgive you. I will pray for you every day, that God get the hold of your heart. And you may not know the gospel, so I'm going to share it with you. The gospel is the death, the burial, and resurrection of Jesus. That's how people are able to forgive people and able to do right and able to pray for those who hurt them and do things to them. So my heart is with you. My prayers are with you, and I just wish the best for you.
Thank you.
Gloria worked very hard for you for 20 years, you and your family. She loved Buster and Paul as her own. She loved Maggie, and she trusted and loved you wholeheartedly. She considered you and your family as her own family. To have her loyalty and love and trust betrayed by you is very hard for our family to understand. We just will never understand. And how you were able to profit from her death is especially hard for us to understand and cause unimaginable hurt to our family. The fact that if only you had given Tony and Brian just a very small portion of the money you stole from them, they would have appreciated it and been very happy while thinking that you had kept your word, done your legal duty, and looked out for them and their best interest. Instead, you chose to break the law that you had sworn to uphold, be greedy, and look out for your own best interest. Alec, in time, the wrong you did to so many people may be forgotten, but in hopes that Gloria and her pure heart, full of kindness and love, will not be forgotten, we started the Gloria's Gift Foundation in honor of Gloria and her memory by providing gifts to some needy children during Christmas, so that Gloria will be remembered forever. And my heart goes out not only to my family, but today to hear all these families that you did wrong by. Those children that you stole from, everything. They lost a mother, and you stole every dime from them. I just don't understand. Did you not have a soul? I don't get it, Alec. I can't understand it. And I thank God maybe that I don't understand it, because then I might be in the same situation as you. I just don't get it, and I guess I never will get it. So hopefully God will forgive you, because you're going to need forgiveness. I just don't know. I'm lost for words, Alec. You are not the person that I thought I knew. And you come from a good family, but you wasted your life. And I hate you did your family the way you did, because you do come from a good family. And I'm sorry you threw your life away. Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to address.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you to the state for everything y'all did for us to find justice.
That's on behalf of Satterfield.
Thank you.
Tony Satterfield, Gloria's son, stood before the court and stared at Murdaugh. "I pray for you daily," he said. "I just want God to work on you in your heart." Think about what it takes to say that. To look at the man who stole millions meant for your mother's death, who lied to your face while positioning himself as helper, and to say you pray for him. That's the kind of strength Murdaugh never possessed. Other victims came forward. Jordan Jinks, whose settlement Murdaugh stole. Hakeem Pinkney's family, whose compensation disappeared. Each one represented a moment when Murdaugh saw vulnerability and chose exploitation. Even his law firm partners had to confront what happened under their watch. The betrayal wasn't just of clients. It was of every principle their profession claimed to represent.
When I got out of court, I saw that I had missed communications from one of my partners, Mark Ball, and I called him, and he said, "We have a problem," and I was like, "What?" And he said, "You have to come now," and I said, "I'm just walking out of court. I need to go home and eat supper, and it's not on my way." And he didn't ever tell me what it was, but he said, "You have to come now." And I could tell the urgency, and so he told me where to meet him, and that would have been in Cummings, South Carolina, at my partner Danny Henderson's place, and which was not on my way home, but he was so insistent that I went there and met. When I got there, Danny and Mark were there waiting on me.
And ultimately, what was your discussion?
I was giving a folder that had paperwork in it, and that paperwork consisted of checks, both front and back, and I was asked to review them.
And were those the what's been called the fake forged checks?
I believe the fake forged checks, there was not all of them that Ms. Seckinger went over, but I believe that there was, I could probably call the names of most of them that were there. I know it was Anderson, Bush, Moore. There was probably about 5 or 6 of them, and I believe they had a copy of the Ferris check there too.
Ferris check?
Yes, and I'd sat for a minute and reviewed it. I think Danny said, "You're going to need a drink," And so,
Did you have a drink?
yeah, ultimately more than one.
What happened after that?
Well, they didn't tell me what was in it. They let me review it on my own, and I immediately said, "This is bad." And my words then were that we have to terminate Alec. He cannot no longer practice with us, and that was within I don't know how many minutes, but it was not a long period of time because the way Jeannie had it laid out. It was clear what had happened and that this money had been stolen.
Did any of the partners go to confront Alec with this information that had been uncovered?
Yes, there was a meeting the following morning at Lee's house. I did not attend. I did not need to attend. I was still getting ready for trial. I had already decided where this was going. And they met, and then we, Danny and Randy, Alec's brother, went and met with Alec.
And what was your understanding of what the defendant said as a result of that?
That he admitted and said that he knew he was going to get caught at some point in time, and admitted to them that he did it.
Ronnie Crosby, a partner at Murdaugh's former firm, testified about discovering the theft, about realizing one of their own had been systematically stealing from clients for years, about the shock of learning that someone they'd worked alongside had weaponized their trust. The firm itself became a victim, but was also the environment that made the crimes possible. Position and power created opportunity. Fear prevented questions. Lack of internal controls allowed systematic theft. This is where the performance breaks down, where explanation meets evidence, where someone finally forces him to sit inside what he did without escape.
It wouldn't be unusual for me to look them in the eye.
While you were doing some fast talking to a teenager, correct?
I certainly was not telling her the truth. I don't know if I was talking fast or slow, but I wasn't telling the truth.
All right. Well, you ultimately convinced her that there was nothing amiss here, right? While you were stealing her money, correct?
I don't know if I convinced her that nothing was amiss or I misled her, but I admit candidly in all of these cases, Mr. Waters, that I took money that was not mine and I shouldn't have done it. I hate the fact that I did it. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed for my son. I'm embarrassed for my family. And I don't dispute that I did it. I
understand that. But you understand that we have to ask about these things because we've heard about it in a very academic paperwork manner, but every single one of these, you had to sit down and look somebody in the eye and convince them that you were on their side when you were not, correct? That's what you did in every single one of these.
I mean, every time...
Answer my question, yes or no, and then you can explain. I'll let you explain all day long.
Well, I mean, no, sir, that may or may not be true.
Okay.
And Mr. Waters, just to try to get through this quicker, I admit...
I know you want to get through it quicker, but we're not. So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money. Now, this is something... What's the date on that one?
Prosecutor Creighton Waters methodically walked Murdaugh through each theft, each lie, each manipulation, not letting him redirect, not accepting explanations, making him acknowledge how he identified the vulnerable and exploited them. Did he get your permission to steal your money? Waters had asked Tony Satterfield earlier. The answer was obvious, but the question mattered, because Murdaugh had built his entire operation on making theft look like help, on making exploitation look like advocacy. Watch this moment. Is this grief? Or is this the first time he's realizing that the performance isn't working anymore?
I was asleep. My phone's always kind of sit beside the bed. I could hear it buzzing, but I really wasn't paying it any attention. My wife comes in kind of, just hysterical. She says, you got to wake up, you got to wake up. And I don't remember if she was on the phone with Randy's wife or Randy himself. She's trying to tell me what's going on, and I'm looking at my phone, and I've got a text from a person I knew in Hampton that's texting me saying, hey, give me a call. I got to tell you something before you hear it somewhere else. It was a person that was in the county government down there that I knew that was just trying to get word to me before I heard it somewhere else. My wife, I don't think I respond to that person or her text immediately. My wife is telling me what's going on. I just told her, I said, I'll get some clothes. I got to go to Moselle. We started trying to call our daughter right at about 11 o'clock. Started trying to call our children, tell them what was going on. I don't even know how much my wife and I spoke about it. I mean, she knew I was leaving. I got in the car, I went straight to Moselle, grabbed some clothes and went straight to Moselle.
So how long does that take?
From Columbia, about an hour and 40 minutes or so. I mean, I called some different people on the way that I thought needed to know. I mean, repeatedly tried to call my daughter. She was extremely close. She is and was extremely close to Buster and Paul. And, we couldn't get her to answer, called her boyfriend, just repeatedly calling her.
When Chris Wilson testified, Murdaugh cried, his best friend describing how he'd been used as an unwitting accomplice. But notice when the tears came. Not during victim testimony. Not when hearing about Gloria Satterfield's sons learning their mother's death had been monetized. The tears came when someone from his world had to speak against him. Let's return to that smile. Throughout proceedings, Murdaugh smiled at moments that should have destroyed him. When trial dates were set. When evidence convicted him. When victims confronted him. Maybe it's a habit. A reflex developed over decades of watching juries, judges, settlements. A survival mechanism from a man who spent his career performing for an audience. Who learned that the right expression could influence outcomes. The smile became automatic. A learned courtroom behavior his brain continued even when the room had decided against him. Even when there was nothing left to win. That's what makes it so disturbing. It's not strategic. It's trained. Alex Murdaugh understood the legal system better than most. He knew deadlines, trust, delay. He knew how money could disappear quietly with the right forms, accounts, and coordination. The tragedy isn't just that he broke the law. It's that he knew exactly how much pain it would cause and did it anyway. For over a decade, to people at their most vulnerable, who needed help and found a predator. He targeted Gloria, who raised his children. Workers who couldn't afford lawyers. Families too grief-stricken to ask the right questions. And he did it while attending the same churches, community events, sitting at the same tables. That's the lesson. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it offers help. Sometimes it knows exactly what to say to make you trust it. And when it's finally exposed, when victims speak, when evidence is undeniable, it might still smile. Because the performance is so ingrained, the performer doesn't know when to stop. Alex Murdaugh will spend life in prison. 40 years federal, 27 state, both alongside 2 life sentences for murder. The Satterfield family recovered over $7.5 million through civil actions. Other victims received restitution orders. But as attorney Eric Bland stated, Alex will never be able to pay anybody he hurt a smidgen of what they truly deserve. Money can't restore what was taken. But the victims speaking did something else. They broke the spell. They shifted the room away from him. They refused to let him control the narrative one more time. That's what happens when people finally speak back. When they stop believing the performance. When they demand that someone who spent years hiding behind helpfulness finally sits inside the harm he caused. And maybe that's the real question this case asks us. How many people do you trust without question? How many systems do you assume protect you? How much does reputation matter when deciding who to believe? Because somewhere right now, someone else is creating a fake account. positioning themselves as a helper while plotting theft, targeting the vulnerable while wearing respectability's mask. The Alex Murdaugh case isn't just history. It's a warning. Trust carefully. Question constantly. Never assume a smile means safety. This is Dark Trail Files. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the darkness hiding in plain sight. The scariest monsters aren't in shadows. They're the ones sitting across from you, offering to help. We'll see you in the next investigation.